On the morning of February 2nd, 2008, winter sat quietly over Tinley Park. It wasn't the kind of morning that stands out in memory. No unusual headlines, no urgent warnings, just cold air, routine movement, and the steady rhythm of suburban life beginning another weekend day. Parking lots slowly filled. Coffee cups warmed hands. Store employees unlocked doors and flipped on lights. Inside a clothing store operated by Lane Bryant, the day began like hundreds before it. Folding clothes, checking registers, greeting co-workers. Nothing about those early moments suggested they would soon be remembered across the entire country. But tragedy rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, disguised as normalcy. And within hours, 5 women would lose their lives. 1 person would survive. And an entire community would find itself at the center of one of the most haunting, unsolved mass murder cases in the history of Illinois. This isn't simply a crime story. It's a story about how ordinary environments can suddenly fracture, how families live with unanswered questions, and how time passes, even when justice does not. This is Abylore. Subscribe for deep documentary storytelling. Now, let's begin. To grasp the emotional shock that followed, it's important to understand the setting. Tinley Park was widely viewed as stable and family-oriented. It wasn't defined by violence or instability. It was defined by predictability, and predictability creates a sense of security. Residents shopped locally. Children attended nearby schools. Daily routines blended into comfortable familiarity. The retail center where the event occurred, Brookside Marketplace, represented that everyday normalcy. It was not isolated, not abandoned, not hidden. It was active, public, and ordinary. That's what made the later events so deeply unsettling. Because when tragedy happens in places people associate with safety, it shakes confidence far beyond a single location. The store opened shortly after 10 a.m. Employees prepared displays and greeted customers. Clothing racks were straightened. Registers were activated. It was routine retail work, repetitive, familiar, predictable. Then a man entered. Descriptions later portrayed him as calm and direct. Nothing about his presence initially suggested escalation. Retail employees interact with strangers constantly. Most encounters are harmless, expected. But this interaction changed quickly. The man revealed a weapon and began issuing commands. Moments like these unfold in psychological slow motion. Confusion competes with fear. Instinct battles disbelief. 6 women were directed toward the back stockroom, and inside that confined space, uncertainty intensified. What followed would permanently alter multiple families and communities. Gunfire broke the silence. 5 women lost their lives. Gwen Pender, Jennifer Hudson, Nancy Cobbs, Cheryl McFarland, Paula Merkin. 1 woman survived despite being seriously injured, later providing crucial information to investigators. The attacker left before authorities arrived. Emergency responders soon reached the scene. And within minutes, an ordinary shopping center became an active investigation site. But beyond procedure and response, there was a deeper reality. Lives had ended. Families were about to receive unimaginable news, and a community's sense of safety had been broken. In the minutes following the attack, confusion spread throughout the shopping center. Sirens approached. Emergency responders moved quickly. The routine sounds of retail activity were replaced with urgency and tension. Shoppers and nearby workers were left trying to piece together what had happened. Many didn't yet understand the scale of the tragedy unfolding just steps away. For first responders, scenes like this demand professionalism, but they also demand emotional resilience. They encounter the reality before the public ever hears about it. Inside the store, the situation was devastating. Outside, questions were already beginning. What happened? Was anyone else in danger? Who was responsible? Within hours, the incident would move from local shock to national attention. And for the families of the victims, time seemed to slow, waiting for information, hoping for clarity, fearing confirmation. Moments like these become permanent dividing lines in people's lives, before that morning and after it. As news spread through Tinley Park, residents struggled to process the scale of the loss. The tragedy wasn't distant. It wasn't abstract. It happened in a familiar place many had visited countless times. Community members gathered. Vigils were held. Flowers appeared. Candles flickered in memory of the 5 women whose lives had ended. Grief often brings people together, not because answers exist, but because shared presence offers some comfort. For many, the event challenged long-held assumptions about safety and predictability. When violence disrupts ordinary spaces, it reshapes how people perceive their environment. Parents reconsider routines. Workers rethink normalcy. Neighbors speak with greater urgency about connection and awareness. These social ripples extend far beyond the immediate moment, and they can last for years. Coverage expanded quickly. Local outlets reported first. National media followed soon after. The case became a headline across the country, discussed not only for its severity, but for the mystery surrounding motive. Stories explored. The lives of the victims, community reactions, the early investigation, the unanswered questions. Public awareness brought both benefits and challenges. It generated tips and attention, but it also intensified scrutiny, speculation, and emotional strain on those closest to the tragedy. Media exposure plays a complex role in major cases, amplifying urgency while shaping public perception. And in this case, perception would evolve as time passed. Law enforcement escalated efforts rapidly. The Tinley Park Police Department coordinated with the Federal Bureau of Investigation to pursue every available lead. Their work included extensive interviews, tip line management, evidence processing, behavioral assessment, surveillance review. Investigations of this scale require coordination across multiple disciplines: forensic science, analytical review, and community outreach. Authorities released suspect descriptions based largely on surviving witness information. The individual was believed to demonstrate composure and control during the event, observations that informed investigative direction. Despite large-scale efforts and public cooperation, no arrest followed, and gradually the complexity of the case became more apparent. Cases without immediate resolution create unique strain. Investigators continue working while public attention slowly shifts elsewhere. Families live with uncertainty. Communities carry memory without closure. Evidence must be preserved. Leads must be revisited. Hope must remain. The passage of time doesn't end an investigation, but it changes its nature. Instead of rapid response, the focus becomes persistence, reviewing, reanalyzing, waiting for new information or technological advances. And while progress may not be visible, the search for answers continues behind the scenes, because unresolved cases are never truly finished, only ongoing. When the initial shock faded, the case entered a different phase, one driven by science, patience, and limitations. Crime scene investigators documented every detail inside the store: bullet casings, blood stain patterns, footwear impressions, surveillance angles. But forensic evidence doesn't always deliver certainty. Television often creates the illusion that answers appear quickly, that DNA, fingerprints, or cameras instantly identify suspects. Reality is more complicated. Evidence can point in directions. It can exclude possibilities, but it doesn't always name a person. In this case, although physical evidence existed, none of it led directly to a confirmed suspect. And without a known offender to compare against, forensic material becomes a question rather than an answer. This is one of the hardest truths about criminal investigations. Evidence doesn't solve cases by itself. People do. One of the most critical aspects of the investigation came from the woman who survived. Survivor testimony is invaluable, but it is also shaped by trauma. In moments of extreme stress, the brain prioritizes survival over detail. Memory becomes fragmented, distorted by fear, shock, and pain. And yet, the survivor's account helps shape the suspect description, behavioral observations, timeline reconstruction. Her survival was not only remarkable, it was essential to the case. But carrying that experience forward meant living with memories no one should have to bear. Survivors often face a second, quieter struggle after the event ends. Living with what happened, living with what was lost, living with what was never resolved. And unlike a trial or conviction, unresolved cases deny survivors a sense of finality. As time passed, investigators began asking deeper questions. Not just what happened, but who could do this? Behavioral analysis focuses on actions rather than identity. In this case, certain elements stood out. The suspect appeared calm. The attack was controlled. Victims were gathered and isolated. Violence exceeded apparent motive. These factors raised difficult questions. Was this impulsive or rehearsed? Was fear the motive or control? Behavioral analysts consider patterns, but patterns don't equal certainty. One action can mean different things depending on context. And without additional crimes to compare, conclusions remain cautious. Over the years, several theories have continued to circulate. 1. Robbery escalation. The most straightforward explanation, but also the most questioned. Minimal money was taken. The level of violence was extreme. For many, this creates doubt. 2. Targeted individual. Some believe one person may have been the intended focus, with others killed to eliminate witnesses. But investigators never confirmed a specific target. 3. Experienced offender. The suspect's composure suggested possible familiarity with high-stress situations. Still, no confirmed links to other crimes were established. Each theory explains part of the story, but none explain all of it. That's what makes this case linger. As years pass, public focus naturally shifts. New stories emerge. New tragedies dominate headlines. But for families and investigators, time does not erase urgency. It reshapes it. Evidence must be preserved. Witnesses must be recontacted. Old tips must be reevaluated. Cold cases aren't inactive. They're waiting for new information, new technology, someone to speak, and sometimes time itself becomes the final variable. The human cost of the Lane Bryant murders extends far beyond statistics. Each of the 5 victims had families, friends, and co-workers who now had to live in a world changed forever. Grief is not linear. It doesn't follow a timetable. Some families struggled with anger, others with guilt. What if I had called? What if I had been there? Daily life becomes a series of reminders. The empty chair at the table, the call that never comes, the birthdays that pass without celebration. The survivor herself carries a dual burden: relief for having lived pain for those who did not, and the knowledge that answers remain elusive. For communities and families, unresolved cases leave a lingering shadow, one that stretches across decades. Even after years pass, law enforcement rarely closes the door on unsolved crimes. The Tinley Park Police Department continues to review old leads, re-interview witnesses, re-examine evidence with new technology. The FBI remains involved in tracking tips and analyzing patterns. Modern forensic methods, improved DNA analysis, digital footprint tracking, and crime linkage programs can breathe new life into cases previously thought stalled. But persistence requires patience. Investigators often work in the background, quietly, while the world moves on. And for the families, that silence can feel like waiting in the dark. Unsolved cases often carry secrets that are only revealed years later. People who know something may hesitate to speak. Fear of reprisal, uncertainty about credibility, emotional burden of involvement. Yet over time, circumstances change. People move. Memories resurface. Conscience compels disclosure. It's often the smallest detail, a passing comment, a seemingly insignificant observation, that finally breaks the case open. In many cold cases, years of silence are punctuated by a single act of courage. Media plays a dual role in cases like Lane Bryant. It can generate attention and public awareness, keeping tips alive. It can also create speculation and noise, confusing facts with opinion. For families, the media serves as both a reminder and a tool. a way to keep the victims' names alive in a world that often forgets. Stories like this resonate because they highlight vulnerability, resilience, and the ongoing pursuit of justice. Even decades later, the story of Lane Bryant is not simply about crime. It is about human memory, morality, and persistence. The Lane Bryant murders are more than headlines or statistics. They are about lives interrupted, communities scarred, questions that remain unanswered. Someone knows something. Someone may remember a crucial detail. Someone could hold the key to justice. Until that day comes, families, investigators, and the community remain vigilant. Sharing the story matters. Remembering the victims matters. Holding on to the memory is a quiet form of resistance against violence and forgetting. Because in the end, this story is not just about crime, it is about humanity. And until accountability arrives, it is still unfolding. This is Abylore. Subscribe.